Once upon a time, in a peaceful village called Campbell, where everyone lived happily. The village was surrounded by large luxurious trees, and the inhabitants followed special rules. One of the most important rules was that all the girls had to remain pure, that is, they had to remain virgin until their marriage. This rule was very special for the inhabitants of Campbell, and they made sure that all the girls followed it scrupulously. The parents of Campbell were very proud of this tradition. They believed that their daughter was pure and deeply cherished this conviction. Often, they bragged to each other, saying things like, "My daughter is pure, just like all the girls in our village." It was for them a point of honor and a sign of their good education and their respect for their customs. However, one day, something unexpected happened there. A terrible misfortune fell on the village. To lift this curse, it was revealed that only a true virgin could be the solution. There was also the promise that the young virgin who would participate in the sacrifice would marry the prince, and that her parents would receive many gifts and money. Excited by the prospect that their daughter would become a member of the royal family, all the parents brought their daughter to the palace with haste. They were sure that their daughter was a virgin, eager to win the prize and restore peace in the village. As the crowd gathered, a Baal advanced with a large pot in his hands. He addressed everyone by saying, "In this pot is a special necklace blessed by the gods. Only a true young virgin can take it out. It is the test that the gods have given us to find the one who will accomplish the sacrifice." The girls lined up, nervous, while their parents watched them with confidence. One by one, the girls plunged their hands into the pot, but each time they took out their empty hands. The atmosphere became tense as the first girl tried, then the second, and so on. Each failed, and the murmurs among the crowd became louder and louder. Then came the turn of the chief's daughters, known for their grace and their beauty. The first girl advanced with confidence, but she did not manage to find the necklace either. The second girl tried, but also failed. Finally, the youngest girl stretched out her trembling hands, but she also found nothing. The villagers were astonished. The murmurs began to be heard. "How is this possible? Not even the chief's daughters?" The elders exchanged worried, perplexed, and concerned looks. They had always believed that the girls of the village were pure, respecting the traditions they cherished. But now, it seemed that something had gone terribly wrong. The news of the failure of the test spread quickly in the village, provoking disbelief and shock. The girls began to scream, "It's not our fault. It's because of Aunt Azim." Rumors spread, and attention turned to Azim, the stranger from the city. The villagers began to murmur, blaming her for the chaos and misfortune that had struck their peaceful village. "She came here and changed everything," murmured an old woman. "Our daughters followed the traditions, and now look what happened." Another villager acquired this, saying, "Azim has brought the manners of the city to our village. She made the girls forget who they are." And so the story begins. A long time ago, a young girl named Azim came to visit her aunt in the village of Campbell. Azim came from the big city, and she was very beautiful. She always wore colorful and revealing clothes that attracted everyone's eyes. Azim crossed the village with confidence, as if she were a queen, and everyone noticed her, especially men. Seeing Azim pass by, men murmured, "Wow, look there, she is so beautiful." The girls in the village also observed her. They admired the way she dressed and walked, wishing to be like her. "I want to wear clothes like Azim," said a girl. Another added, "She looks so confident and pretty." The girls in the village didn't know much about Azim, but they were fascinated by her. They loved the way she looked so different and exciting. The bright clothes and the confident approach of Azim were like nothing they had seen before. They began to wonder what it would be like to have all the attention Azim received. "Azim is so cool," said one of the girls. "I want to be like her." And so, they watched her closely, hoping to learn more about her and maybe become like her one day. But they didn't know that Azim had a secret that would change everything in the village. Azim had a secret that no one in the village knew. Men who admired her beauty offered her gifts and money, but it wasn't just because she was pretty. Azim met these men in secret, and in exchange for their gifts, she spent time with them in a way that the village would not approve. One day, Ashala, the chief's daughter, became curious to know why Azim always seemed to have new things and money. Ashala decided to follow Azim discreetly to find out what was going on. She saw Azim meeting a man in a hidden place, then Azim left with a small bag of money. Ashala was surprised and thought, "So, is that Azim's secret? Men give her gifts to be with them." She wondered if she could also receive gifts. Ashala had always been a good girl, following the rules of the village, but now she was curious. She wanted to feel special like Azim. The next day, Ashala saw a young merchant who had been watching her for a while. She decided to try what she had seen Azim do. Ashala spoke to the merchant and agreed to meet him in secret. The merchant gave her gifts and money, just as he had done with Azim. Ashala was excited and felt special. "It's so easy," she thought. "I can also have beautiful things." She felt like she had discovered something incredible and was impatient to tell her friends. But she did not know that this secret would cause great change in the village. Ashala could not keep her discovery to herself. She told her friends the secret of Azim and how easy it was to get gifts and men's money. "All you have to do is spend time with them and they give you beautiful things," explained Ashala. Her friends were first shocked, but then they became curious too. Soon, more and more girls in the village began to follow the example of Azim. They began to put on makeup and dress up to attract men's attention. The girls wanted to feel special and receive gifts, just like Azim and Ashala. They whispered to each other, "If Azim and Ashala can do it, why can't we?" Azim noticed the change in the girls in the village and saw an opportunity. She began to organize meetings between girls and men, taking part in the gifts and money that the girls received. Azim told them, "I take care of everything, you just have to be nice to men." The girls trusted him and followed his instructions. They loved the attention and gifts they received from men. They felt special and appreciated the new things they could buy with the money. They began to forget the important traditions of the village, like staying pure and respecting themselves. The excitement of receiving gifts made them forget the values with which they had grown up. As more and more girls joined what looked like a secret club, they kept all this hidden from their parents and the elders of the village. The girls thought they were having fun, but they didn't realize the troubles they were getting into. The secret spread and they changed the village in an unexpected way. Over time, more and more girls in the village began to join Azim's secret meetings with men. What had started with some girls looking for gifts became a common practice. The girls met men not only for the gifts, but also for the attention and excitement it brought them. They felt admired and special, and this feeling became more important than the gifts themselves. The elders and the parents of the village had no idea what was going on. They continued their daily lives, believing that the traditions of the village were always respected. The elders often spoke of the importance of purity and respect, thinking that the girls listened to them and followed their instructions. They did not know that the strong tradition of keeping girls pure until marriage was being broken. The girls kept the secret well. They behaved normally with their families, attended the village meetings, and participated in the daily rites. But behind closed doors, they led a different life, a life that went against everything the village represented. The taboo of meeting men in secret had become a norm among the girls of the village. They no longer felt shame or guilt for their actions. On the contrary, they saw it as a new way of life, a way that offered them freedom and attention. It had moved away from the values they had been taught, and the once solid traditions disintegrated silently, without being noticed by the elders and the parents. One day, something terrible happened in the village of Camberley. The plants began to wither, their leaves turning brown and dry. The animals, usually full of life, began to fall ill and die. Worse still, the villagers themselves began to suffer. Many people fell ill with strange symptoms that no one had ever seen before. It was a dark and frightening period for everyone. The villagers were frightened and confused. They did not know what caused this sudden misfortune. They had always followed their traditions and respected the gods, at least they thought. Desperate to find answers, they decided to consult the Abale oracle, known for his wisdom and his connection with the spiritual world. The villagers gathered at Abale, their faces full of concern. The elders spoke first, explaining the situation and asking Abale what he could do to stop the curse. Abel listened attentively, his eyes closed as if he were immersed in a deep reflection. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "The gods are angry," said Abel in a solemn voice. "They are unhappy with the village because the traditions have been broken. Purity, once so precious, has been lost. To appease the gods, a great sacrifice must be made. 2 young virgins must carry the sacrifice to the sacred altar." The villagers shouted in surprise. The idea of a sacrifice was serious, but even more so to mention virgins. The elders of the village, who had always believed that all young girls were pure, were worried. They were confident that their traditions had been respected, but now they were no longer so sure. Abel continued, "The sacrifice must be made in 2 days, otherwise the curse will become stronger and other sufferings will fall on the village." The villagers who shut down Abel's house with a heavy heart of concern. They knew they had to act quickly to find 2 young virgins for the sacrifice. The village had always been proud of the purity of its girls, but now, with the strange behaviors of the last months, doubts began to emerge in their minds. Their belief, once unbreakable in their traditions, was broken, and the weight of the curse weighed on them all. That is how, the next morning, the shouter of the village walked through the village ringing his bell and shouting that all the young girls go to the palace, that all the young girls go to the palace. His voice resonated in the streets and soon every family heard the call. The villagers knew that this concerned the important sacrifice Abel had spoken of. That is how, the next day, all the girls and their parents went to the palace. And when the test of the pot of virginity was carried out for all the girls by Abel, they discovered that no girl in the village was still a virgin. Azim had turned them all into prostitutes. Back to the present, Abel's voice breaks the long silence of history. "The gods see everything," he says gravely. "Their anger is obvious. We must continue the search, because without the sacrifice, the curse will not be lifted." The villagers then realized the gravity of the situation. The purity they had taken for acquired had disappeared, and the girls who were supposed to represent the pride and traditions of the village had failed the test. Now, they faced the harsh reality that finding the right young girls could be more difficult than they had thought. The weight of the curse seemed heavier than ever, and the village was filled with a feeling of terror and urgency. The fault quickly fell on Azim, who had become the symbol of everything that had gone wrong. The villagers believed that his influence had led the girls to stray, pushing them to abandon their traditions and to attract the anger of the gods on them. The elders shook their heads, filled with disappointment and anger. Azim's parents, who lived in the city, soon heard about the problems their daughter had caused. They were shocked and ashamed. His father, a severe man who believed in discipline, was furious. "We should have raised her better," he said, full of regret. "We were too indulgent, and now she has covered us with shame." Azim's mother, who had often defended her daughter's actions, felt a deep sadness. "I should have been stricter," she said. "I let her do what she wanted because she was our only child. Now look at the mess she made." As the villagers continued to speak, Azim felt the weight of their blame. She realized the impact of her actions and the troubles she had caused. The girl, once admired by the city, was now seen as the root of all the problems in Campbell. The villagers demanded that she assume her responsibilities because they believed that she was the one who had led their daughter to break the sacred traditions. The village was boiling, and the blame on Azim became heavier and heavier every day. His influence had turned the girls away from their values, and now the village was suffering the consequences. The elders decided that something had to be done to restore order and reconcile with the gods. The fate of the village depended on what would happen next, and all eyes were turned to Azim to see how she would face the consequences of her actions. The elders and the villagers gathered to decide what to do. No young virgin had been found and the curse still weighing on the village. They turned to Azim, the one they thought was responsible for this misfortune. The decision was made. Azim would bear the sacrifice alone, in penance for the chaos she had caused. Azim stood in front of the village, feeling a mixture of fear and regret. She looked at the faces of the villagers, all filled with anger and disappointment. Her parents, who had fled the city, stood helplessly by her side. They could not protect her from the consequences of her actions. The oracle told her the calabash was full of offerings for the gods. You must bring it to the sacred hotel in the forest, he said. You will walk alone. It is your burden to bear. With the heavy calabash on her head, Azim began her journey. She crossed the village, passing in front of the disapproving looks and murmurs of the people. When she entered the dense forest, she felt really alone. The trees closed around her and the path became more and more difficult. For 2 days, she walked without rest, her feet painful and her mind heavy. On the way, Azim thought about everything that had happened. She remembered the excitement and attention she had received from the men, the way the girls of the village admired her and wanted to be like her. She now realized how superficial and ephemeral this attention was. It had almost led them far from the values and traditions that had protected the village and made its inhabitants happy. Tears flowed on Azim's face as she continued to move forward. She felt a deep regret for the evil she had caused, not only herself, but the whole village. She now understood that her actions had consequences, and these consequences had brought suffering to everyone. Finally, exhausted, Azim reached the sacred hotel, deeply buried in the forest. She placed the calabash on the hotel and knelt down in front, crying to God to forgive her. She prayed that the curse would be lifted and that the village would find peace. At that moment, Azim felt the weight of her actions and the pain they had caused. As she got up to leave, a feeling of calm acceptance seized her. She knew that she had to face what was to follow with courage, even if it meant being separated from her family and the life she had once known. Azim's journey was not only physical, it was a journey of realization and repentance, and she hoped that, one way or another, the village could heal the wounds caused by her actions. After finishing her journey, Azim returned to the village. As she crossed the forest and returned to Campbell, she noticed a change in the air. The villagers gathered, observing her with a mixture of relief and persistent anger. The plants that had withered began to show signs of life, and the sick animals began to recover. The curse had been lifted, but the consequences for Azim were far from over. The elders stood in front of the village and spoke out. The gods have accepted the sacrifice, they said. The curse is lifted, but Azim must face the consequences of her actions. She will not be allowed to leave the village for 12 years. During this time, she will be responsible for bearing all the sacrifices to the gods. The villagers murmured their agreement. They were relieved that the curse had ended, but still felt resentment towards Azim. As part of her punishment, Azim was assigned to a small hut near the sanctuary, isolated from the rest of the village. The villagers avoided her, and she was treated like a pariah. Azim spent her days fulfilling her duties, bearing the sacrifices and maintaining the sanctuary. She lived in solitude, thinking about the choices she had made and the lives she had affected. The young girl, once joyful and full of life, came from the city, was nothing more than a shadow of herself, overwhelmed by the weight of her past actions. The village, meanwhile, was working to restore its traditions. They reinforced the importance of purity and respect for their cultural values in order to protect their way of life. The elders decided that no one in the city would be allowed to enter Campbell. They wanted to make sure that the mistakes of the past would not happen again. The story of Azim became a moral tale for the children of Campbell. The parents told them the story of the girl from the city who had brought trouble to their village. They spoke of the importance of respecting traditions and making good choices. Azim's life served as a reminder of the consequences of moving away from the path of respect and honor. For 12 long years, Azim stayed in the village, isolated and alone. She lived with the regret of her actions and the awareness that she had brought shame upon herself and her family. Her punishment was not only physical, but also a deep emotional and spiritual journey. She learned that true beauty and true value come from within, and that respecting one's culture and traditions is vital. Over time, the village slowly healed, but the memory of what had happened remained with them. Azim's story was passed down from generation to generation as a lesson in humility, respect, and the importance of making fair choices. It was a sad end for Azim, but also a lesson learned for the village of Campbell, reminding them of the strength and value of their cultural heritage.